Okay, so we're still working on step 5, evaluating premises on the basis of their acceptability, and we've worked our way to example number 10, which, as you remember, if you've seen some of the videos from the previous steps, from step 4, was a very, very large diagram. So large that it would be really hard for me to squish a textbook that had the evaluation of the premises on the same file. So what I've done here is I've created another iLogos file, and I'm going to create a document on this side. I'm going to make it nice and big. Text box here. This is where I'm going to put the acceptability of the premises, the evaluations that I'm going to do. And over on this side of my screen, I have the diagram, and I'm going to move around. In fact, I'm going to start way down at the bottom so that you and I can always see the particular premises that we're working on, even if we won't be able to see the diagram in its entirety at any one point, which is really okay, particularly for acceptability. So as you know, I'd like to start sort of at the bottom of the diagram and work my way up. In this particular case, I'll just work on actual quadrants of the diagram and then move, particularly because, as we know, the details of the diagram aren't relevant when it comes to evaluating the premises for acceptability, especially because we still are not in a position to evaluate subarguments. So I'm going to go one by one through all of these premises and determine whether I deem them acceptable. Sitting politicians are even worse than professional athletes. I see a little typo in there. In terms of being insulated from the consequences of their actions. Do I accept that? No, that's not acceptable. Politicians are regularly held accountable for their actions, particularly through elections. That is, if politicians misbehave in some way, at the next election people can boot them out. They are also held accountable through relentless scrutiny of the media. So we have plenty of examples of this, lots of examples of politicians who have misbehaved in their personal lives and end up having to explain their misbehavior in public. Recent examples include the experience of John Edwards, whose presidential campaign was undone by the discovery of his extramarital relationship. Okay, so I could come up with lots of different examples, but I think that's enough. Unstated premise 25. Professional athletes are quite insulated from the consequences of their actions. I'd say that's acceptable. Even when professional athletes are held responsible for their actions, the consequences often take the form of a brief, relatively brief, hiatus from their career. For example, Michael Vick, although convicted of a fairly serious crime, nevertheless was able to resume his professional career. 26. It's acceptable to boo athletes at sporting events. Well, I'm going to say that's unacceptable. First of all, that's part of what this whole argument is trying to establish. So I don't like that it's being used, that this claim is being used as a sub-argument when it hasn't been established yet. So this is an example of begging the question, because the argument is trying to convince me of precisely this point. So the arguer cannot use this claim prior to its being established. It's a nice catch, because look, there's a dependent premises there, and I notice that 26 commits the fallacy of begging the question, or it's circular reasoning. 24, 25 are dependent on 26, which means that they're not really going to work. So that's showing a pretty serious weakness for the evidence that it's acceptable to boo sitting politicians. So you can't compare one situation to another one without establishing the validity of the other situation. Okay, I'm going to go on to the ones that I can see now, which is 27 and 29. Sitting politicians choose their position in life. That's acceptable. In the US, no politician is forced to run for political office. Although an individual may experience certain kinds of pressure to run for political office, he or she always retains the option of not running. Okay, 29. Being in politics includes being criticized. I'm going to say that's acceptable. Holding a political office in the United States means that one's actions are accountable to the constituents who elected you. So it's appropriate for the actions of a political figure to be subject to critique. 31. Fans can exercise their freedom of speech to cheer or boo. Well, it's actually a misuse of the term freedom of speech. But I'm going to ignore that right now because it's a rhetorical device. Really, this one is saying fans can cheer or fans can boo, and I'm going to say that's acceptable. It is accepted cultural custom at sporting events in the U.S. that fans can cheer or boo. That's not true for all cultures, by the way. There may be different cultural customs. But in the United States, yeah, fans can cheer or boo. Okay, let's keep going, looking at these premises. 28. Sitting politicians should expect criticism. And again, I'm going to say that's acceptable. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut and paste from 29. Same thing, right? Basically the same evaluation of that premise. Holding political office means you should expect critique. That's fine. Now let's go to 30. Other fans are free to cheer sitting politicians if they wish. Acceptable. I'm going to copy from 31. Therefore, they are free to cheer if they so choose. Okay, and I'll just finish the ones that we can see. Remember, it doesn't really matter what order I'm doing acceptability at this point, so I can just do them in any order I want. We should discipline the athletes by booing them. I have to think about whether I agree with that or not. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure booing is actually a form of disciplining. I suppose it could be. It's more a way of expressing your critique, but I'm not sure it's an effective way of disciplining. Does that really change the behavior? Does that do any transformative kind of work, which is what you want discipline to do? I'm going to say that's unacceptable. Now, of course, I know that there's some evidence beneath it that I have to ignore because I don't have the tools, but on the face of it, I'm not sure I would accept that claim. It's not clear that booing is an effective form of discipline, and that it may not serve to effectively transform behavior. Some athletes may be able to effectively block out the booing. And some booing may do more harm than good. So I'm going to say that's unacceptable. And let's have out 20. We don't want athletes to be earning large salaries while also committing crimes. So I'm going to say that's acceptable. Committing serious crimes should not be compatible with earning large salaries. If a person has committed, I just noticed a typo, I'm going to go up there and fix it, a serious crime, he or she has done some serious harm to another person or institution and should make restitution to that person or institution. Well, I'm rethinking this now. I mean, if they have so much money, they may be able to both earn large salaries and make restitution. But not at the same time. And look at that. While committing serious crimes, they shouldn't also be earning large salaries. I'm going to take that restitution piece out because I'm not sure it's actually relevant. And should not be permitted to earn a large salary while also committing that harm. This is particularly true for athletes whose large salaries derive from their entertainment value. It's not right that someone is enjoying fame and fortune while also harming someone else seriously. I don't like that phrasing, while also committing serious harm against another person or institution. Okay. That is premise 20, unstated premise 20. Okay, so I've done all the ones I can see. I'm going to move across here. Do a few here. Move this canvas up. Okay. Let's do 18, 19, and 22. 18. Schools and leagues don't always discipline athletes for off-the-field antisocial behavior. That's acceptable. Sometimes schools or leagues may not know of the behavior, but there are also cases where schools and leagues have looked the other way in order to maintain their own image. I can't remember any examples off the top of my head, but I know that's happened particularly in college and college athletics, but also in professional athletics, and I'm sure in high school athletics. So I would accept that. 19. If athletes are not disciplined for off the field, they could end up earning large salaries while also committing serious crimes. Well, that's true. Acceptable. If athletes are not held responsible, their careers will be able to continue unimpeded. And those careers could include large salaries. Do you see how I'm adding just a little bit of information in order to evaluate? You can't evaluate the premise and just repeat it. To add at least a little bit more information. 22. Home and away players are responsible for the booing because they committed the off-the-field antisocial behavior. I disagree with this. Unacceptable. Just because the athletes committed the antisocial behavior does not make them responsible for the actions of those who are responding to that behavior. The booers are responsible for booing. This is true whether the booing is justified or not. Okay, let's move our diagram and go to some different premises to evaluate them for acceptability. I'm just going to go up, and let's go over here. Yeah, we took care of 30. Let's do this quadrant. I don't know if it's literally a quadrant, but here's a nice big chunk of premises that we haven't done yet. Let's start here and start at 38. The author has yelled at coaches. Acceptable. The author's personal testimony about her or his own behavior is reason enough to accept this claim. I'm saying the author should know whether the author has yelled at coaches. Okay. Let's go to 39, and let's see if I can scroll down here a bit. I may not be able to scroll down here till I make this even bigger. We'll see. Okay. 39. The author can't critique anyone else for yelling at coaches. Again, I'm not looking at the evidence for this because I have to move this a little bit to scroll. I just realized. I don't have the tools necessary. I don't have the knowledge necessary to evaluate sub-arguments. So I'm going to just take it by itself, making this as big as I can, and see whether I accept it. And I'm going to say that's unacceptable. There are no specific criteria that must be met in order to license one person to criticize another person. This author is free to critique anyone else for poor behavior if she or he wishes. Okay? Then let's go at 40. Yelling at coaches is a matter of individual conscience. So I take this premise to be saying that, you know what, you can do it, you can not do it, it's just up to you. And I would say that's unacceptable. There are certainly cases where yelling at coaches ought to be I don't want to use the word unacceptable, ought to be frowned upon. It is yelling at coaches is not something that each individual should get to choose to do or not. Okay. Let's see, 23. It's acceptable to boo sitting politicians at sporting events. Again, can't look at the evidence. I'm thinking about that. I mean, different people could come to different judgments about that. I'm going to say that's acceptable. If a politician has engaged in truly reprehensible actions or has taken political positions that I have serious disagreement with, it may be appropriate for me and other citizens to express our feelings about such actions or positions at sporting events. This is especially true given that there are relatively few opportunities for citizens to be in close personal contact with politicians, at least on the federal level. It may not be true for, say, mayors or something like that. Okay, moving on to 46. Scientific research has shown that officials tend to want to please the folks in the stands. I'm going to provisionally accept this. I would like to see the research that is referenced to make sure that it is of sufficiently high quality, but this claim seems reasonable. Okay, going up here to 37, it is acceptable to boo coaches at sporting events. Not looking at the evidence, I'd probably disagree with that. Unacceptable. Coaches have a lot on their mind and are managing an enormous number of details. Scroll down a little bit. It seems we may have reached the limit of the screen and iLogo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it this one 2 pages wide, and that's going to give me some more space over here. See if that helps. If I have to, I'll open up another iLogos page for the rest of these. Let's get back to this. It seems unlikely that booing would influence their decisions, and if that is the case, booing is a useless expression of disagreement. Lots of people could disagree with that. Let's go to 34, and I'll create a little bit more space here. Owners of teams put their face on franchises. I'm going to say that's acceptable. Many contemporary owners of professional teams highlight their ownership in mainstream media, so their faces are often highly associated with the teams. 33, owners of teams have large egos. I'm going to say that's unacceptable. I do not have enough background information to accept this claim about all owners of teams. It's quite possible that some of them are humble individuals. I'm going to stop there and just open up a new iLogos file because that one's just getting too big, and we'll continue with 35. So I'm going to make another iLogos. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make this box quite large. People with large egos should be able to tolerate what comes with owning a franchise. I think that's unacceptable. Having a large ego need not correlate in any way with ability to tolerate whatever may accompany owning a franchise. For example, having a large ego may not mean that you can tolerate unpredictability or high stakes negotiations regarding salaries or anything of the sort. Okay. 36, owning a franchise comes with getting booed. Again, I actually find that unacceptable. It's almost begging the question, but the most central problem is there is no necessary correlation between owning a franchise and getting booed. It is easy to imagine a cultural situation where owning a franchise does not subject you to the possibility of booing. And then I think we have 2 over here we haven't done, 44 and 46. Officials consider being booed as part of their job. Unacceptable. I have no knowledge about what officials consider to be part of their job and what they do not consider to be part of their job. Moreover, I doubt that the contracts that officials sign include clauses about the possibility of being booed. Being booed is not central to the job of being an official. 46, scientific. Oh, I think I already did 46, didn't I? Okay, so that's good. Let's move, if we can get over to this one. Let's move over here. Okay, I'm going to move this. Actually, what I'm going to do first is make this even a little bigger. The bigger it is, the more you can see as I'm typing. So I'm going to make that nice and wide. I'm going to put this canvas over here, trusting that you don't need to read that. And we can start again here. Good. Okay. So these are all premises that we haven't done yet, although I think I might be hiding a few by making this. Let's put this over here. Yeah, we need to see 43 and 47. Okay, and let's move it down a little bit because there's some lower ones over here. So we'll start here, and we know that we'll have some more to the right. Okay, so 12, steroid use is cheating. I'm going to say that's acceptable. Steroid use has been banned in professional sports for several years now, especially in baseball. You can't really see, I'm going to have to move this, is widely considered to be cheating. Mm-hmm. Barry Bonds used steroids. I believe that's acceptable. I remember reading about the controversy surrounding Barry Bonds and the evidence indicating that he did, in fact, use steroids seemed to be strong. 11. The Asterisk campaign was an honest expression of fan disgust over steroid use. If I remember correctly, the Asterisk campaign was a campaign to have any of Barry Bonds' record marked by an asterisk in the official Major League Baseball documentation to say, yeah, he did these, he hit this many home runs, but asterisk only while he was cheating. And I'd say that's acceptable. The Asterisks campaign was a good compromise, a way of describing Bond's achievements while simultaneously expressing the widespread view that those achievements occurred under a cloud of cheating. Okay, good. Let's go on to 9. There's nothing worse than cheating in sports. I mean, is that literally true? I don't think the author means it to be literally true. And I'm trying to think of something that's worse in sports than cheating. Of course, all the really bad things, hurting another player, throwing a game, betting, all these things, or facilitating successful betting, those are all forms of cheating. So I'm going to say this is acceptable. The meaning of sports and the excitement that makes sports so entertaining are both dependent upon the integrity of the game. If the viewers are aware that the players may be cheating, the game immediately becomes meaningless and lacking entertainment value. So cheating has the ability to undermine the most central. They just put meanings of sports. 10. Major League Baseball should have allowed the Astros campaign against Barry Bonds. I think that's acceptable. Barry Bonds' steroid use was so well documented and so extensive that it stands to reason that much of his success could be attributed to the steroids. The Astros campaign was merely a way to recognize that reality, and so MLB should have allowed it. Notice I'm not just repeating the premise. 15. Booing cheaters is not unsportsmanlike. I'm going to say it's acceptable because the integrity of sports is so important. It is appropriate for fans to boo players who are undermining that integrity. Let's say what does 14 say? Booing cheaters is a responsibility of the fans. I don't think booing is a responsibility of the fans. Fans may choose to boo or not to boo, but they don't have any responsibility to boo. The only responsibilities that are associated with being a fan have to do with respecting the other viewers and not ruining the experiences of others around them. 17. It's acceptable to boo players for off-the-field antisocial behavior. Again, I'm not going to look at the evidence. I know because I see this arrow that there's evidence. That's very tricky. If a player has done something off the field, that's antisocial. They've stolen something. They've committed vandalism. Do I get to boo them? I'm going to say unacceptable. The player, in the context of a sporting event, is just an athlete, and the responsibilities that that player has extend only to her or his performance in that sporting event. Poor behavior off the field, while it may be relevant to, say, the player's family or the individuals that the player has harmed, is really not relevant to the fans. Let's do 16 while we're here. It's acceptable to boo cheaters. I'm going to say that is acceptable, and I'm going to use the same thinking that I did up here for premise number 15. Okay, because it's so important. Integrity is so important. Let's go over here. Remember, we did 46, we did 44, we've done 17. So let's move it up. Let's do this section here, 45. Officials tend to want to please the folks in the stands. I'd say unacceptable. If they're doing their job correctly, officials should seek only to be accurate and fair. Let's move this canvas out of the way. Officials who want to please the folks in the stands should, frankly, be fired. Moving over here to 42. Current broadcasters who are members of a former hater rival expect to be booed. Unacceptable. I don't know anything about what current broadcasters do or do not expect. I would need to ask them before determining whether this claim about their expectations is accurate. 47. Home crowds have the psychological advantage over the officials. Unacceptable. I would need to see research about this claim. Although there is a widespread belief in the ability of a home crowd to affect officials' decisions, this may well be a mistaken impression. Okay, 44. Officials consider being booed as, I think I already did that one. Yep, I did 44. So let's go up to 43. It is acceptable to boo officials at sporting events. Again, I have to look at that independently of all the sub-arguments. I'm going to say it's acceptable. If an official makes an obvious mistake, it is appropriate for the fans to bring that mistake to the official's attention, as well as to the attention of the other of the players and all the viewers. That's appropriate, you know. 41. It's acceptable to boo a current broadcaster who's a member of a former hated rival. Unacceptable. Even if the broadcaster used to be a member of a former hated rival, she or he no longer is playing that role, and it's unfair to treat them as if they remained in that role. They're different now. Now they're a broadcaster. Let's go over here. I think we've done everything over here. Okay, let's go over here. And let's go to the bottom. Let's see if there's anything. We've done all of that. So all we have left to do are these premises here. I'm going to open up a new iLogos window to do that. So it's got another text box here. We're almost done with this really, really long argument that had so many premises. I'll put the canvas down here. We don't need it. Make this nice and big. And acceptability continued. Seven, people are willing to boo their opponent because of bad behavior. Well, that's acceptable. I have attended many sporting events and have noticed fans booing their opponents. All I need is a little personal experience. 5, professional athletes turn into maladjusted narcissists. I'm going to say that's unacceptable. This claim is far too general. It seems to be making a claim about all professional athletes. Surely there are some professional athletes that are not, in fact, maladjusted narcissists. 4, coaches have looked the other way in pursuit of victories. Acceptable. There are many documented cases of coaches ignoring bad behavior in order to maintain a winning record. This happens frequently. Let's say the career of Manny Ramirez is one case in point. Manny's always saying something that he shouldn't be saying. Okay, 3. Today's star athletes have not been booed since they were children. That's unacceptable. I doubt that star athletes could have reached their level of play without the experience of being booed. Yeah. To become a star athlete usually means playing at both the high school and college level, and at some point, surely, the athlete has been met with failure of some sort. Okay? Booing athletes when you're young will keep them from being maladjusted. Unacceptable. Booing will surely have little, if any, effect on character development. 8. People should be willing to build their own team or pair because of bad behavior. I'm going to say that's acceptable. If booing is to be allowed at all, it should be done fairly, on the basis of behavior, and not on the basis of whether the player in question is favored by the fan. 2. Booing poor conduct should be encouraged. That's a difficult one. I'm going to say that's unacceptable. The only reason booing should be encouraged is if it has positive effects, and I would need to see some strong evidence that that is the case. In the absence, I don't think booing should be encouraged. Okay, I think we've done every single premise. Let's make this a little bit bigger, as big as I can make it. Let me just see. This is the top. I'm going to go all the way across. I don't remember if I did 32. I think I'll need to check to see if I did 32. May not have gotten up that high. I know I did 33, 35, and 36. Okay, let's see if I did 32. Did all of these, we did all of these, we did all of these. All right. Did all of these. Okay, good. Let's just check. I just need to see if I can find premise number 32. Gonna make this one smaller again. Now I have a series of untitled ones. Let me put that out of the way. It's not on that one. I might need to do 32. I think I didn't get it done. So let me go back to here. With such a large one, you want to double check and make sure you did all the ones, because I caught a good one. Let's do 32. And that is, it is acceptable to boo owners of teams at sporting events. I can't look at the evidence. Is it acceptable to boo owners of teams at sporting events? I'm going to say acceptable if those owners have acted poorly in their role as owners. If, say, they insisted that an excellent player be traded, a trade that resulted in a series of losses, then it is appropriate for fans to express their criticism of the owner's actions. Okay, good. I think we're finally done. We've done step 5. We looked at each individual premise in this example number 10 and determined whether they were acceptable. Notice a couple of things. Some were acceptable, some were unacceptable, lots of different bases. Don't be lulled into thinking that if you found a bunch of acceptable premises, that means the next one is likely to be acceptable. There's no necessary pattern to premises and their acceptability in argument. You really have to look at each one fresh on its own to see whether you accept it or not. Okay, that's good.